Hello everyone. Did you know that 80% of those who watch my videos have not subscribed? If you enjoy these stories, I'd truly appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to leave a like and tell us your thoughts in the comments. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you for watching. My brother's treatment was working. The tumor was shrinking. His oncologist was cautiously optimistic, and for the first time in months, we had hope. But the bills kept mounting. Each treatment cycle cost thousands, and even with insurance, the out-of-pocket expenses were crushing. When they offered me triple pay for a rotation at Abyssal Light, I didn't hesitate. I didn't even ask questions. Triple pay meant I could cover another month of treatment, maybe two. It meant my brother might live. That was all that mattered. Abyssal Light was different from the others, fundamentally different. It wasn't near the coast, wasn't perched on some rocky outcrop within sight of land. It was 60 miles offshore, built on a rock platform in the deepest water on the continental shelf, over 3,000 feet deep. The lighthouse had been constructed in the 70s as part of a deep water navigation project, and it was still operational, though barely. The structure looked more like an oil rig than a traditional lighthouse, all concrete and steel and functional brutality. The station manager's briefing was brief, almost dismissive, like he wanted to get me signed and out the door before I could reconsider. Previous keeper left after 6 days, cited impossible readings on the monitoring equipment. You'll be checking subsurface sensors, maintaining the beacon, standard protocols, 12 weeks triple pay. Questions? What kind of impossible readings? He waved his hand dismissively. Equipment malfunction. Probably just needs calibration. The sensors are old. The depth plays havoc with accuracy. You'll figure it out. You've got experience with this kind of work. The boat ride took 6 hours through increasingly rough seas. The captain, a man named Denny in his 50s, with skin like worn leather and eyes that had seen too much, was quiet for most of the trip. He kept the boat steady through the swells, his movements practiced and economical. But as we approached the lighthouse, as that massive concrete structure rose from the horizon like some industrial monument to human ambition, he throttled back the engines and looked at me. "You know why they pay triple for this one?" he asked. "Because it's remote. It's not just remote, it's deep. Nobody knows what's down there. The surveys they did before building this place, they found things they couldn't explain. Structures on the seafloor. Old structures, older than anything that should be there, older than human civilization." "What kind of structures?" He shrugged, but his eyes were serious. "They classified most of it. National security, they said. But the crews who worked on the construction, they talked. Couldn't help themselves. Said there were ruins down there, stone and metal arranged in patterns, geometric, deliberate, clearly built by something intelligent. They built the lighthouse anyway, right on top of it. Some of the construction crew quit. Said it felt wrong, like they were disturbing something that should stay buried." He pulled alongside the dock, a narrow platform of steel grating that clanged under our feet. He helped me unload my gear, his movements quick, like he wanted to leave as soon as possible. Before he climbed back onto his boat, he looked at me one more time, his expression grave. "If you start seeing things on the monitors, things that don't make sense, remember that nobody knows what's down there. Nobody. And maybe there's a reason for that." The lighthouse was more modern than the others, built from reinforced concrete with actual windows that didn't leak and climate control that actually worked. The monitoring equipment was on the second floor, a bank of screens and sensors that tracked everything from water temperature to seismic activity to sonar readings of the seafloor 3,000 feet below. It was sophisticated equipment, military grade, far more advanced than what you'd find at a typical lighthouse station. I spent the first few days getting familiar with the systems, reading through the operation manuals, running diagnostics on all the equipment. Everything seemed normal. Water temperature steady at 42 degrees. No unusual seismic activity, just the normal creaks and groans of tectonic plates settling. Sonar showing nothing but empty water and the seafloor 3,000 feet below, a flat expanse of sediment and rock. On the fourth night, I heard something I'd never heard before, a sound coming through the hydrophones, the underwater microphones that monitored ocean noise for research purposes. It was rhythmic, mechanical, like someone tapping on metal with a hammer. Slow and deliberate, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause. Over and over with perfect regularity. I checked the equipment, running through every diagnostic I could think of. The hydrophones were functioning normally, no interference, no equipment malfunction. The sound was real, coming from deep water, from somewhere beneath the lighthouse. The depth reading showed it was originating from approximately 2,000 feet down. I recorded it and played it back, trying to identify the source. It wasn't biological. No whale or dolphin or any known marine animal made sounds like that. It wasn't mechanical either. No ships in the area, no drilling platforms, no underwater cables or pipelines, nothing that could produce that kind of regular rhythmic tapping. But there it was, clear as day. 3 taps repeating endlessly. The sound continued for 3 hours, then stopped. Just ceased abruptly, mid-pattern, as if someone had turned off a switch. The next night, the depth sounder showed something that made my blood run cold. A large object rising from 2,000 feet below. It was massive, at least 100 feet across, ascending slowly but steadily. The sonar return was solid, dense, not the dispersed signal you'd get from a school of fish or a thermal layer. I watched the screen as the object climbed, my heart pounding. 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, 500 feet. It was rising at a steady 20 feet per minute, deliberate and controlled. At 100 feet below the surface, it stopped. Just hung there in the water, directly beneath the lighthouse, motionless. The sonar showed it was holding position, not drifting with the current, not sinking back down, just waiting. I could feel it through the floor. A vibration, slow and rhythmic, like breathing, like the beat of some massive heart. The entire structure was vibrating in time with whatever was below, the concrete humming with a frequency I could feel in my bones. I went to the window and looked down at the water. In the beacon's rotating light, sweeping across the dark ocean every few seconds, I could see something glowing deep beneath the surface. Not reflected light, but its own light emanating from the object itself. Organized patterns, geometric shapes, pulsing in rhythm with the vibration I felt through the floor. I watched for hours as the lights pulsed below. They formed patterns I couldn't quite understand, arrangements that seemed deliberate, purposeful, like some kind of language. They weren't random. They were communicating something. The patterns would shift, reorganize, create new configurations, then shift again. At dawn, the object descended. The depth sounder showed it sinking back down, back to 2,000 feet, then deeper until it disappeared off the edge of the screen, dropping into the abyss beyond the reach of the sensors. I filed a report, described what I'd seen, what the sensors had recorded, attached the data logs and sonar recordings. The response came back the same day, terse and dismissive. Sensor malfunction. Recalibrate equipment and continue monitoring. Do not file further reports on equipment issues. But I knew it wasn't a malfunction. The recordings were clear. The vibration had been real. I'd felt it through my entire body, felt it in my teeth. And the sonar data was unmistakable. Something large and solid had risen from the depths and then descended again. That night the object returned, rising faster this time, climbing from the depths in less than an hour. It stopped at 50 feet, then 30, then 20. Each time it paused, the vibration increased, stronger and more pronounced, until I could hear the structure groaning around me. I could see it now through the window. Not clearly, but enough to make out shape and form. It was a structure, ancient stone covered in geometric patterns, intricate carvings that seemed to shift in the pulsing light. Metal framework that looked corroded but still intact, still functional. It was enormous, dwarfing the lighthouse, rising from the deep like some forgotten monument to a civilization that shouldn't exist. The sonar was showing details now. The structure was complex, multi-leveled, with chambers and passages running through it like a honeycomb. And at the center, something was rotating, turning slowly like a massive gear, grinding with a sound I could hear through the hull. The lights on its surface pulsed brighter, and I realized they were forming a pattern I recognized. A map, coordinates, every lighthouse I'd worked at marked in light. Harrow Point, Widow's Watch, Beacon's End, all connected by lines of light that converged on a single point. Here, Abyssal Light, at the deepest point. The pattern suggested a network, a web of connections spanning the entire coast. I found the hidden journal that night, tucked away while searching frantically through the station's storage lockers for any previous documentation. It was in a waterproof case, hidden behind the monitoring equipment, covered in dust. The first keeper, a man named Samuel Cray, had left it in 1974, shortly after the lighthouse became operational. His entries described the same things I was seeing, the tapping sounds, the depth anomalies, the lights in the water. But he'd gone further. He'd researched the area, talked to locals in the nearest coastal town, found old records in university archives and historical societies. The indigenous people who'd lived along this coast for thousands of years had called it the Watcher's Tooth. They'd considered it forbidden, a place where something ancient dwelled, something that had been there long before humans arrived, long before their own ancestors had first seen these shores. They'd warned the early settlers never to build there, never to disturb what lay below. Their legends spoke of lights in the deep water, of voices calling from beneath the waves. But the lighthouse had been built anyway, deliberately, according to Cray's research. The government had known about the structures below. They'd built the lighthouse specifically to monitor them, to keep watch over something they didn't understand, but knew was there. The entire deep water navigation project had been a cover story. Cray's final entry was dated November 1974. The structure is still active, still functioning after what must be thousands of years. Whatever built it, whatever purpose it served, it's not finished. All the lighthouses along this coast, I've checked the records. They're all positioned over similar sites, a network, a warning system. But warning against what? What were they watching for? And why do they need us to keep watching? That night, the structure broke the surface. I watched through the window as it rose, water streaming off its ancient stone in torrents, revealing the full scope of its size. It was massive, a tower of its own, easily as tall as the lighthouse, covered in symbols that glowed with their own inner light. Bioluminescence, maybe, or something else entirely. At its peak was a lens, an ancient lens, like the Fresnel lenses in the lighthouses, but older, much older, made of some crystalline material I didn't recognize, perfectly formed, impossibly preserved. And it was still rotating, still functional after thousands of years, grinding slowly on mechanisms that defied understanding. The beam from the ancient lens swept across the water, and when it passed over the lighthouse, when that ancient light touched me, I heard them. Voices. Hundreds of voices, maybe thousands, all speaking at once in languages I didn't know, and some I did. Previous keepers, lost sailors, everyone who'd disappeared near these waters over the centuries. They were all there in that light, trapped or preserved or something else entirely, calling out in an endless chorus. And then I heard a voice in my head. Not through my ears, not through any physical medium, but directly in my mind, clear and undeniable. Join us, or run. But you can't ignore this anymore. The choice was made when you accepted this position. The voice continued, explaining things I didn't want to understand, revealing truths that felt like they were breaking something fundamental in my mind. The ancient structure was a lighthouse too, built by whatever had been here before humans, before recorded history. It was part of a network that stretched across the ocean floor, monitoring something coming from deeper water, from the abyssal depths beyond our reach, beyond our understanding. They needed help. The keepers of the ancient lighthouses, whatever they had been, they needed human keepers to maintain the watch from both sides, from the surface and from below. The structures were failing after millennia of operation. The network was breaking down. And whatever they'd been built to watch for, whatever they'd been warning against for thousands of years, it was getting closer. The sensors were detecting it. Movement in the deepest trenches, something rising. I called for emergency extraction. I didn't explain. I didn't try to justify it. I just grabbed the radio and said I needed to leave immediately, that I was abandoning my post, that they could keep the pay. Denny arrived the next morning. He didn't ask what I'd seen. He just looked at me, at the fear in my eyes, at the way my hands were shaking, and nodded. "Everyone who works these waters knows," he said as we pulled away, as the structure sank back beneath the waves. "The company knows. The government knows. They've always known. They just need people desperate enough to keep watching." 3 weeks later, I got a call from the station manager. They wanted me for a training program at Cormoran Rock. Special assignment, new equipment, higher pay than I'd ever been offered. "You've been selected," he said. "Your experience at the deep water stations makes you valuable." I hung up without answering. 2 days after that, a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a photograph, an underwater photograph of a boat hull taken from below. Someone was visible on the deck, looking down at the water. It was me. I recognized my jacket, my stance. But the photograph was dated yesterday. I hadn't been near the ocean in 3 weeks. I'd been hundreds of miles inland. On the back of the photograph, written in water-stained ink, "The watch continues, with you or without you."